So, on to a more controversial issue. A viewer from War Road and a viewer from Saginaw both want to know what's going on with the Senate office building. And this one viewer from Saginaw says, hey, there are some large number of empty offices in St. Paul. Why don't we just fill those up? So, who wants to talk about the Senate office building and where it sits? Anybody want to start? Senator Conan, should we start with you?
Well, I can talk a little bit about it. I'm sure there's a lot of opinions on it. To the point of finding another building, say downtown St. Paul or something like that, you know, you could do that. There's very few buildings that are large enough, though, to hold the Senate, because we would, at least for the short term, we're probably going to need a place to hold a session, too, at least for one session. So there's very few buildings. There are a few, but not very many that are big enough to hold that. And also, the cost of repurposing those buildings and the cost of hooking everything up so we're all hooked up for media, all the computer and telephone and all of that, we could be looking at costs from 18 to 22 million, which would pay for a third of the new Senate office building. So, you know, those are the kind of things that are being considered. I know for myself, I like my office in the Capitol. Personally, I wouldn't mind staying there, but I know that that's not reality. As the Capitol is being refurbished, there's going to be space lost. In other words, the Senate won't fit in it unless we really redo the plans. But the current plans, from my understanding, the House will gain space in the Capitol, the governor will gain space in the Capitol, the Historic Society will gain space in the Capitol, and then there's going to be more space for the public, which includes, you know, things like restrooms and another elevator and that type of thing.
And larger meeting rooms.
Yes.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
but that's right. And so, you know, for the Senate to stay there, we'd have to stop everything and replan and then start again. And that idea of moving off, into a building downtown, I mentioned the cost. We could be looking at 18 to 22 million. And that's just to get set up. But then, you know, it would make business from that point on very cumbersome, because we'd have, you know, quite a bit of distance between, as reports are moved back and forth between the two bodies and all things like that. I like to compare it to having a cafe that has the kitchen, you know, half a mile down the road, and you know, prepare the food and have to wheel it down, and so it'd be a little awkward to do that. But in the cost, and I'm giving you round numbers now, the total cost you always hear is about 90 million, but it's a third of that is actually a parking ramp and not the proposed building. But I'm interested in hearing what everybody else has to say.
Senator Root, your thoughts?
I think one of the biggest problem is that we never had a hearing and we never had a conversation on this. It was put in the bill last year and it passed. We never had a conversation about what were the needs of the Senate, what we should do, what were our options. And that's very problematic. Had we had that conversation about what we should really do, how much it would cost us, that building is only for 44 senators. It is not for the whole Senate. That's problematic. If you were going to build a building for the Senate, then make it for 67 senators. And right now, only the majority party would move into that building. And so I think that's problematic in itself. It's not functional, in my estimation. I would like to see a very functional building without reflecting pools, without gyms, without all the bells and whistles that go into that. And the parking ramp is probably the only piece that's really worthwhile in the whole thing, because if you try to park at the Capitol, it's very, very difficult. So we do need a parking ramp. But this building really never had a good vetting. $90 million is a lot of money. And I really think it should have come through the process like any other bill. And maybe we could have come to a good resolution about space, timing, money, taxpayers' dollars. I think it wasn't thoughtful enough. When we spend $90 million of taxpayers' dollars, I mean, they work hard for their money, and we shouldn't be so reckless with it as to spend it on that building.
President Sawicki, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I would agree with parts of this conversation. First of all, we are renovating our Capitol right now, and because of the renovation that we have decided to do, with the upkeep and making it so, because we haven't taken care of that structure, just by process of remodeling and making spaces bigger and more usable for our citizens, because it is the people's home house. And I was looking for a restroom on, I think it was first floor, and I think I didn't know where I went in the end, because there aren't enough for restrooms in where a lot of people do generate and gather. But I guess, so I think we need a building that is certainly not full of bells and whistles. So I agree with you 100%. I also think that I think all the senators should be in one place. I mean, so I think that the makeup of what the building looks like, I think can be under, hopefully can be under discussion still, and make some adjustments there. I think there has been discussion, and there is a study going on right now about renting places, how much that would cost, how much to renovate and bring up to speed. When one of the suggestions was using the former Macy's building, and I think, well, that's going to be really convenient for our citizens. Go down to through what is about a mile from the Capitol and then the state office building where where the House of Representatives are. It's just not real user friendly for our citizens, and so I guess that's something that we'd have to consider. And I think that people should understand that if you are off campus, if you're relocated or permanently or temporarily even, I mean, there's going to have to be a shuttle system or something to make it more feasible for you and as well as for citizens. The parking ramp is absolutely necessary. I think that is something that we need to investigate or continue
And
to have.
Representative, to that point, those are all conversations that are great conversations that should have been had before the bill passed. And so if we'd had those conversations, we wouldn't be here today. We would have a plan. We would know the answers to all those questions. I kind of liken it to remodeling your house. I remodeled my first house, and I can tell you that my things went in a box, and we were kind of inconvenienced, but I didn't go out and build a new house to stay in while I remodeled this house. And I don't think any of our constituents would do that. So all those questions are great questions, and they should have been answered before we got to this point.
Representative Driscoll?
Watch how I segue on this. We generate an awful lot of paper in our business. And the reason I say that is if we are going to undergo a renovation and remodel, one of the things that makes a lot of sense to me is that we would have taken those dollars and done the same thing to the state office building, and all the committee rooms would be having laptops or monitors where all the bills that were coming up, you get on a touch screen, be able to have all of these kinds of things coming up. And the reason I think that that's important is the revisor's office takes a lot of space in that building. We could electronically tie the revisor's office into the state office building, into the Senate, to the Senate conference rooms, and we could actually physically locate them somewhere else in a lower rent district. And it's my understanding just down the Capitol complex, the Centennial office building has vacant space in it. So if we were to take some of those support services and be able to relocate those in a remote area that could support this with a small on-site tech team to be able to help us with those things, we'd save a lot of paper. We'd end up saving a lot of extra use of things, and it would be much more efficient, I think, in that process. Yes, we need parking because it's very difficult for Minnesotans to come down to the Capitol to see their legislators and to see our business in action. I do believe that I heard a number that with the Capitol restoration, we found another 80,000 square feet that was otherwise cordoned off and inside of walls and different things. And if we really sat down and reworked some of those things, I bet we could move some of the printing in different areas that were there and some of the other kinds of things and save some square footage and really probably get by without putting another office building on the campus that really isn't going to fit into the historic look and feel that we have there. Nothing against the Department of Transportation, but that 8-story building that is in it that just really inhibits people's ability as they drive around downtown St. Paul to see that. That's the first thing your eyes focus on, and it really should be the Capitol and the dome of the Capitol, my opinion.
Where's the bill at procedurally? Where's the whole process at procedurally? Do we know?
Well, my understanding procedurally is that it has passed in the tax bill last year in the House and the Senate, and the only committee that has to sign off on it yet is the House Rules Committee, and that would be by a simple majority of members, and it has not been brought forward to the Rules Committee by leadership at this point. So that's my understanding. I would defer to other, maybe
No, I
Representative
believe
Swatsky
the
or
House has the control about whether it goes forward or not. But they have not brought it up yet.
Right, yeah, and I'd like to comment too, that, I mean, there's that idea out there, this is such a lavish building. You hear about reflecting pools and exercise rooms, that is not part of the plan. There are no reflecting pools or exercise rooms. Now, that doesn't mean the building won't look nice, but it costs the same to build a nice-looking building as an ugly one, so, you know, you might as well build it. But on the process, you know, there were some good points made up here, but in the tax committee in the Senate, on 3 different hearings, this subject came up. And then on the House floor, it was there again in the tax bill, or it's the Senate floor, I mean, when we debated it there. And then the decision was made not to have committees try and plan the building, but to form a group of legislators who were interested to get together to help develop the plan, along with admin. And I understand that members of both parties from both houses were invited. Well, I really wasn't interested in that, so I didn't go, and I don't know what kind of turnout there was in that planning process.
You didn't want to help make a beautiful building, or you'd be maybe blamed for an ugly building.
Yeah, it's realities of life. I got another job to attend to too. So
if I might just add, this is my final thoughts on it. Senator Coonan was talking about, you know, $18 to $22 million to do the phone and internet and all those kind of relocates. You know, we would have those same kinds of hard costs, whether we put it in a new building or in a remodeled building. So I think some of those are costs that we would incur. It's just where we're going to ultimately make those kinds of investments. And it would have been, I'm with Senator Root on this, it would have been nice to have had more of a robust conversation about this and get input from the people who might be affected more firsthand by this.
Well, we'll have more opportunities to discuss it, because I guess it hasn't yet gotten the good housekeeping seal of approval that it needs, so we'll just have to see where we go from here.